Hello, everybody. This is going to be your first video in a series of videos related to Xcode and Swift. All right, so in this video, we're going to create an app. It's called HelloWorld. And in the app, I'll introduce you to the basics of Xcode. We're not going to do any coding or anything like that, but we'll just talk about the Xcode product and something called the simulator. So before you start using Xcode, you have to download it. And then the way you download it, you go to the App Store. And then if you just type in Xcode, you will find the program. Okay. You just simply download it from here. This is the easiest and the best way to do it. If you're looking at an older code, an older version, if you want, you go to your developer account and then you can download it from your developer account. But for now, this is the easiest to get started. You just go to the App Store, you select it, and you download it. Okay. All right. Once you install it, it will be installed. It will be in your launch app. So which is this little rocket here, and then it will be Xcode listed with a hammer. You double click on it and it works. You can put it on your taskbar by clicking and dragging and putting it on the taskbar below. Okay. All right. Now I already have Xcode, so I'm going to create a new project. File, new project. A project is an app. Think about a project as an app. Now let me go through this here and talk about the different options that you have to create an app. The first one is you have to select, because we're creating an app for an iOS, we have to select iOS, and then I can select an application. An application, I have several templates. The first one is called, let's start with this one, single view, an app. This is like for our class, for this example, we'll have one single view. But suppose you want to have like a list of things, and when you click on it, it shows you the details of that element you've selected. So we have a master detail application. And this is very similar, if you think about it, if you have an iPhone, similar to a contact list. When you click on the contact, it shows you the detail of that contact. Okay. A page application, which allows me to like flip pages. If I have a book of some sort, I can go through these pages like a book, okay? And it looks exactly like you're flipping a page. Tab bar, a tabbed application. Again, if you look at your phone app on iPhone, like when you want to dial, at the bottom you have different options. Recent, you have contact, and then you have favorites, I think. So these are tabs. What allow you to do, it allow you to go from one screen to another in an easy manner by just simply clicking at the buttons in the on the tab at the bottom of the screen. And then game allow me to create games for iOS devices. Okay, in the scope of this, we're not going to cover games yet. Hopefully in the future we will. Okay, so that's all I have to do. You select the application, single app, and then we click on next. Here I need to give it a name. Okay, so I'm going to say hello world, and you give it the organization name for identification and the organization identifier. Now these are used later on by your app when you publish it on your app store, but what is important is this thing here, this bundle ID. The bundle ID is like your unique app ID on the app store. So you're not going to we're not going to mess with this, okay? In the past, we can only use Objective-C. Now, with iOS 8, we have actually Swift, so we can use Swift language. And this is the series of these videos will cover only Swift, okay? The device, you can select an iPad, an iPhone, or universal. Now, if you select an iPhone, it can run on an iPad, but it's like more like in a simulated manner, not exactly on an iPhone. But if you select an iPad, you cannot run it on an iPhone. If you want to do both, you can select universal, but that adds more complexity to your project. That means that you have to have, in your app, you will have to figure out, am I running on an iPhone? Do the, you know, maybe the UI elements will be different. Am I running on an iPad? Maybe I have a bigger screens. The screen designs may be different. So you will usually have two designs, one for iPad and one iPhone if you use Universal. But now we're going to use only iPhone. We'll click on next. And I already have Hello World in here, so I'm going to create it on the desktop. Okay, and then say create. Okay, I'll go through this and I'll spend some time with this because this is important, okay, to understand. I'm not going to cover everything, of course, we'll be lost, but I'll cover the main things that we will use in the next videos, upcoming videos. First of all, this is your project components, meaning that you have all the files, all the programs, all the images, all the sounds, all the videos, whatever you have in your project will be listed. It will be in this project, okay? Now, it's good that you organize your project in folders, okay? And then you can do that by creating a new a group or a new group from selection. You can create a new group, you can create a new folder, whatever, right? So that will be in here, okay? The target of your project is, it says iOS 8 SDK 8.1. Let me expand this a little bit more. We'll go over these in more details in a minute. But let's see what we have here in this screen. This is the project properties. We have many things that are important here. Again, this is your bundle identifier, the version of your app, your first build, and we don't have any theme yet. What this means, this is, again, this is used in your iTunes account when you want to upload your app. If you want to update it later on, you'll have to give it a different version, okay? What am I deploying this app for? We are actually right now, we're saying it is iOS 8.1 or 8.0, okay? So I can specify what phone I want it to run on, or what operating system I want it to run on. Now the device, again, we saw an iPhone. Now there's something called main interface. Here you see something called main.storyboard, and I'll go in details about storyboards in a few minutes. What this does, it allows me to say when I run, which screen I want it to run. I'm going to start with. In most cases, we will start with the main storyboard. Okay, you see another screen. It's called launch screen.xib. We call this nib file. Okay, I'll go and I'll explain this in more detail in a minute. All right. So because we're using an iPhone, and I'm going to make this as simple as possible, you can specify how do you want to run your app. Do you allow rotation or not? Do you want to run it on portrait or only portrait? For now, we say yes. Okay, so we're going to run it in the portrait interface at the beginning. All right, status bar style, we can use the default. You don't need to do anything with it. Now, the icons and the images of your app, okay? Later on, when we're ready to publish your app, we have to provide an icon with different sizes. We need to provide some screenshots of your app. You need to define, maybe provide like a default screens. In the past, I don't know, with this here, I haven't used the launch screen before, so maybe you don't have to do it with the launch screen. So this is, we will use later on. This is very important. It's called linked framework and libraries. What are these? Let's say I want to use in my app the map or the geolocation. What does this allow me is that if I want to use the geolocation, I have to include the libraries that is associated with the geocode. So for example, I can say core location, and then core location, and then I will say core location and add. Okay, so now it is part of my project. Okay, for now, we're not going to do any of these. So I'm going to remove this core location. But this is where you add libraries to your project. Okay. So this is for your basic project setting. Okay, so we're done with the basic with this project setting, but let's take a look at what we have here. You also have the file inspector, okay, which is related to the project in this case. We have also, think about this is like your properties. We also have a list of things that we can use in Xcode that are already provided for us. These relates to the UI, meaning what? The graphical user interface elements. You can have some preset codes. Okay, you can use these code blocks and then you just drag it into your code. Okay, most of us, I haven't used it a lot, but if you're just starting, maybe this would be a good start where you can bring in code into your project. Okay, this is an if statement, for example. All right, you have this is the classes, some of the documentations. I think this is all right. And so this is the object. So we will see this is the object. This is the one that we use a lot. Okay, this is called, we show the object library. All right. The views, you'll see this on top here. You have different views, different panels if you want. You can hide and show the panel as you need. This is your output and your debug messages. Okay. When is this useful? This is useful when you first run your app. Okay, when you run your app, basically. So I don't need it for now. Maybe because of the screen size, I want larger area to work with. So I can hide whatever panel I want. Okay, you got that? So this is hiding the panel, the project panel. Okay, and this is for the property panel. All right. You got the same thing here. The one that you use a lot for now is the project, the folder, the project listing. You have also the classes that you have in your project. You can do search, all right, for a particular, when you have a lot of objects in your project or classes or components, you can search for them here. Okay. This is for you when you run your application, breakpoints, debug, and this is for, I think this is for debugs again. All right, I haven't used this one here. Show report navigator, okay. But mainly the one we are interested in is this. For now, it's just this. Sometimes you want to use the list classes. Okay, so this is what we have. All right, the next thing we have is the play button and the project that we're running and the device we're running it on. Okay, so when you play it, there's something called a simulator. I want to test my app. I don't want to test it every time on my computer. I want to test it on my only on a simulator. Okay, we call it a simulator. Now you can specify what device do you want to run it on. For simplicity now, I'm going to use preset size iPhone 5 or iPhone S, okay, for simplicity. Now, we're going to run it. When you run it, you'll see something appears in the screen in a few seconds. And this is called a simulator. You notice we got something at the beginning, and it's a blank screen because we haven't put anything on it. All right. A simulator is another app. It's not Xcode. It's another app that runs to test your apps. This one is used to simulate how is your app going to look like on the different devices. And if there is a menu, I don't think you can see the menu on the screen. Your device, your simulator look like this at the bottom of your screen. If you click on it, you have something called hardware. Under hardware, you can issue command. For example, you can say home. So as if like you're hitting the home key. Now this looks like exactly like an iPhone or an iPad. It has apps, You can, when you run it, it installs your app on your device. So this is my app that I just installed. Again, if you go to hardware and then you do home, you can do that. Under hardware, you can do rotate left. You can do rotate right. Okay. You can do gestures, which we will talk about later on. Okay. Now, what else do you have? And in the simulator, you can, let's say you have a lot of apps. You've been testing a lot of apps, and then you want to clean your simulator. You want to restart it. And sometimes this is a good way, because I've seen in the past where we get some problem with it. So how do you do it? You go to iOS simulator, and there's something called reset setting. When you do reset setting, as if like you are resetting your phone to like the original state. Okay, so it will remove all the apps, and then you have the simulator fresh. Okay, so this is important. All right. Now let's take a look at some of the objects that we have on the screen. First, there is a file. This is called a class, and this file is important. This file is called app delegate. What this does, it has many functions. We call them functions. We want to call them methods if you're coming from different programming languages, whatever you want to call them. But in just like any app, like if you've done Java 2ME before, you have similar things. You have basically the life cycle of your app, which means what? This is when your app starts. Maybe you want to do something. Maybe you want to initialize things. You want to get your locations. You want to go and get fetch something from this internet somewhere. So this is when you first application, we call it. No, this is not the first. This is the one here. I'm sorry. This is the one. Okay. So this is when it finishes launching. What do you want to do? This is when it becomes inactive. Okay. Will resign active. It means I'm about to become inactive. Here, when it entered the background. Here, when you enter the foreground, it appears again on the screen. This is like hitting the home button. It goes back into the background. What do you want to do? Maybe I want to save the state, or do I want to do something in the background? So, or put things to sleep. So this is what happens in when an application enters the background. Same thing here when it enters the foreground. Maybe I want to bring in data back, or if I have saved some data, bring them up. Okay, so this is when it enters the background. A summary, and this is when it terminates again. A summary of this is the life cycle of your project, of your app. What happens to the app throughout the life of that app while it is running, okay? And you can do things based on what your app wants to do. So we call these functions. All right, so this is an important class called app delegate. Another thing that is important, because we have something called storyboard. Remember, this is what the main storyboard earlier we looked at. A storyboard allow me to design my user interface. I'm going to zoom here so you can see it. What it does, you have a screen and we have a starting point. Do you see this arrow? This arrow tells me that I'm going to start on this screen first. You can design your screens by using this here. You can add things to this screen. Now, to do that, you have to zoom in. So, for example, if I want to add a button to this, so I just drag it and drop it. So this is my first screen. All right, let me zoom back and then show you what else you can do with this. Maybe this would be my first screen, but when I click on a button, it shows me another screen. So I have a tool here that allows me to add another screen. We call this view controller. So here is another screen. So now I have two screens, and I can tie them together by dragging, there's something called, you connect this with another one. So what this storyboard does, it allows me to design my UI in a quick and a logical manner. I don't have to create, in the past, we have to create multiple classes. We used to call them nib files and then tie them all together. Okay, so this is nib classes. This is the storyboard. Okay. There are a few things that are important to us here. The first one is the file inspector. And so this is your storyboard. Now, as I was saying, that you have file inspector here. This is kind of important. Now, in the file inspector, we have something called auto layout and use of size classes. With the introduction with the different screen sizes, this has became important because you don't want to design different screen, different user interface for every device that you have. To get around this, we have these options that use auto layout, but it is not an easy topic for you at the beginning. Okay, so we will cover this later on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to disable these for now, and it still run for iPhone. Okay, so you notice it changed the screen size. All right. Okay. That is for the storyboard. So this is important step that you do for now. Okay. In addition to this, you have what we call, this is a view controller. The view controller is actually a screen, but it need to do something with that screen, it need code behind it. And this code behind it, we have something called property. If I click on this, this is the view controller, or just click on this, and then you click on the property, and this is your view controller. We have in the identity inspector, we have a class. This class is the actual class or code, if you want to call it, that is related to the screen. So if I want to do actions, calculations, some output, I will have to go to the class that is related to this. And here it's called view controller, which is already created for us. You see that? This is the view controller that is tied to this screen. Now, another thing that you have another view controller will be added, but remember, this has no class. It has UI view controller, which is the default view controller. So I don't have any custom classes for this view controller. So it's not going to help me any. So I'm going to delete it. Okay. So we have only one screen. All right. And then because we changed the size, we need to make sure that we put the button in the right place. Okay. So this is your screen. Now, there's other things that you can put. If, for example, we can put a label. I'm going to put a label here. And this is a label that could be a title, whatever you want. And where do you change these titles? There is a properties. First property, you click on this button here, show attributes inspector properties. Then you can specify what text you want. Hello world. Okay. You can change the alignment, you can change the color, you can change the fonts, you know, all of this stuff you can do in this property. Okay, we will do more of this later on. All right, so that is your label and your main storyboard. Assets for images, your icons and things like that. Again, when we start talking about publishing your app, we will get to it. Now we have something called default launch screen. The size, I'm going to make this again 4" to make it similar to what we have before. Here you have in the file inspector, you want to use for this file, do you want to use auto layout? You want to use size classes. We're not going to use auto layout. And I'm going to use the launch screen. Meaning what? It means that when my app first start, I want to show this screen. Okay, it appears for a few seconds and disappears, or less than a few seconds actually. So now watch what's going to happen. If I want to change this, I go to the property. There is something called the view. The view is like your background panel if you're coming from Java. If you click on the property, there is something related to the view. I can change this to any color I want, all right, to make it a little bit flashy. Now, when I start my app, this screen will appear, okay? This screen will appear. So now, all I have to do is just run it, and then you'll see this screen will appear for a second, less than a second, it goes away. So this is really the basics of Xcode, all right? We didn't go into details, but I think there's enough information that it can get you started. Let's quit the simulator and let's take a look at the project that we've created and stored on the desktop. If I go to the desktop, you'll see that I have the HelloWorld folder. This is your project. It has everything that you've done in your on your Xcode. Inside of it, it has all the components. There is one that is important, which is if I want to relaunch the app, all I have to do, double click on this, and then it will open my app again, my project again. Here, I have all the classes, the images and everything in here. So if I want to send this to somebody, or I want to copy it or put it on, and you can of course do it this way, just copy this folder into a flash. But if you want to store it on a Dropbox somewhere, or if you have another way of storing your project, you can zip it by right-clicking on it and compiling it. Now you have a copy of it, and you can send it to whoever you want. So this is the basics of Xcode and your HelloWorld app. I hope you find this helpful, and then we should build up on this in the next videos. See you later.